A capon, sensing that his time for slaughter was near, started avoiding the farmhands and servants like they were carrying knives. One day, as the master approached, the capon bolted like his feathers were on fire. A hawk, perched nearby, tilted his head and asked, "Why are you running like someone's chasing you with a pot of boiling water?" Panting and out of breath, the capon replied, "Whenever the master gets close, bad things happen. Last time he gave me the look. You know, the dinner is you look." The hawk burst out laughing and said, "Bad things, buddy, I'm a hawk. I am the bad thing. You think I lose sleep over that?" The merchant and his wife. A merchant lived with his wife in a cottage by the shore. His long voyages often kept him away from home for months. After one particularly lengthy journey, the merchant returned to find his wife with an infant child. Surprised and displeased, he questioned her, as he had been at sea for nearly a year. The wife explained, "This is not your son. He's a miracle, a snow child. One winter day, returning from church, I slipped on ice and fell into a snowbank. 9 months later, I gave birth to this snow child. Isn't he wonderful?" The merchant had to admit the child was indeed a wonder, with his bleached white hair and skin. He seemed to accept this new family member. Years later, on a hot summer's day, the merchant announced to his wife, "I'm going to the market in the next village. I'll take the snow child for an outing." That evening, the merchant returned alone. "Where is our son?" asked the anxious mother. "Something terrible happened," the husband replied. "We were walking across a broad meadow in the hot sun, and the husband hesitated. He melted." The man, the boy, and the donkey. A man and his son were taking their donkey to the market. As they walked beside it, a passerby remarked, "How foolish! What's a donkey for if not to ride?" So the man put his son on the donkey. Soon after, they passed some men, one of whom commented, "Look at that lazy boy riding while his father walks." The man then told his son to get off, and he rode the donkey himself. Not long after, they encountered 2 women. One said to the other, "Shame on that man for riding while his poor son walks." Unsure what to do, the man finally had his son sit in front of him on the donkey. When they reached town, people began to mock them. The man asked why, and someone replied, "Aren't you ashamed of overloading that poor donkey with yourself and your big son?" The man and boy dismounted, pondering their next move. Eventually, they cut a pole, tied the donkey's feet to it, and carried the animal on their shoulders. People laughed as they passed. At the bridge to the market, the donkey kicked free one foot, causing the boy to drop the pole. In the struggle, the donkey fell over the bridge and drowned, its feet still bound. An old man who had been following them said, "That will teach you. Try to please everyone, and you'll please no one." 49. The Donkey and the Grammarian. A certain grammarian boasted that he was so skilled in his craft that, if given proper payment, he could teach not only boys but even a donkey. A prince, hearing this man's audacity, asked him if he would be confident in teaching a donkey to read and write within 10 years for 50 gold pieces. The impudent man replied that he would not refuse to be put to death if, after 10 years, the donkey couldn't read and write. Hearing this, the grammarian's friends were amazed and criticized him for promising to do something not only difficult but impossible. They feared that, when the time was up, the prince would have him killed. The grammarian, however, responded, "Before this time elapses, either the donkey will die, or the prince, or I." This story suggests that in times of danger, delay can sometimes be a helpful solution. The rustic seeking to cross a river. A countryman needed to cross a river. He searched up and down to find the best place to ford it. After trying different spots, he made an observation. Where the water flowed smoothly, it was deepest. Where it made the most noise, it was shallowest. There's more danger in a reserved and silent enemy than in a noisy, babbling one. 651. The Fly on the Chariot Wheel. A fly sat on the axle of a chariot during a race. As the chariot moved, the fly looked at the dust it was raising and boasted, "Look at the dust I'm raising." The chariot kept speeding along, but the fly thought it was causing the great stir. It didn't realize that the dust was actually caused by the wheels and the horses, not by its tiny presence. This fable teaches us that some people who think they are very important fail to see that they are insignificant in the grand scheme of things. They imagine they are the source of great effects, but in reality they are just small players in a much larger picture. 652. Out of the frying pan into the fire. Several fish were being fried in hot oil. One fish said to the others, "We must jump out to save ourselves." The other fish agreed and leaped out of the pan. However, they landed on hot coals below. As they lay dying, they cursed their foolish friend, saying, "We thought we had escaped one danger, only to meet a worse fate." This tale warns that in trying to avoid present dangers, we may fall into even greater peril. 653. The Lion's Son and the Man. A lion warned his son not to fight humans, but the young lion ignored his father's words. When he grew up, he ventured out and saw oxen in a field. He asked them, "Are you humans?" "No," they replied. "We only bear the yoke humans put on us." Then he saw a horse and asked, "Are you a human?" "Not at all," said the horse. "I am a horse, but I serve humans." Later he spotted someone in the forest splitting wood with wedges. "You must be a human," the lion said. "Then fight me." "Gladly," the man replied, "but first help me split this tree." Eagerly, the lion dug his claws into the tree's crack to remove the wedge. But as he did, the wedge fell out and the wood snapped shut, trapping his paw. He struggled with all his strength and finally tore himself free, his paws bleeding. Limping back to his father, he said, "Father, if I had listened to your advice, I wouldn't have lost my claws." 654. The Fox and the Moon. One night a fox was walking along a stream. He saw the moon's reflection in the water and mistook it for a wheel of cheese. Hoping to reach it, he began lapping up the water, thinking that once the stream dried up, the cheese would be his. He kept drinking and drinking until he drowned. The Fox Announcing Peace. A fox once saw a rooster perched in a tree. "Come down," the fox called. "I want to talk with you about many things. It's been so long since we last met." "How kind of you," the rooster replied, "but I feel safer up here." "Haven't you heard the news?" said the fox. "All animals have declared peace. From now on, we are all friends." The rooster said nothing but kept looking into the distance. "What are you staring at?" the fox asked. "If I'm not mistaken," the rooster said, "I see hunting dogs running this way." "If that's true," the fox said, "I'd better leave at once." "Wait," the rooster called. "Why not stay a little longer? Aren't all animals at peace now?" "That's true," the fox replied, "but perhaps the hounds haven't heard the news yet." 656. The Wolf and the Boatman. A wolf, wanting to cross into another land, came to a river and asked a boatman to take him across. "I'll give you whatever you want," said the wolf. "Just let me aboard." The boatman agreed and told him to step in. The boat pushed off from the shore. Then the wolf asked, "What payment should I give you?" "Tell me 3 truths," the boatman replied. The wolf agreed and immediately said, "He who does good, does well." Halfway across the river, he spoke the second. "He who does not, does worse." The boatman asked for the third. The wolf said, "I don't have it ready, but I'll think of one as we reach the shore." As they neared the bank, the wolf suddenly leapt from the boat. Standing safely on dry land, he said, "Any good done for the wicked is completely wasted." 67. The Wolf, the Crow, and the Ram. A wolf once saw a crow perched on a ram. With a deep sigh, he said, "That crow is lucky, born under a good sign. No matter where he sits, no matter what he says or does, no one speaks ill of him. But if I were in his place, everyone who saw me would shout and rush to chase me away, as if they were saving the ram." 658. The Wolf and the Priest. A priest taught a wolf the alphabet. The priest said A, and the wolf repeated it. The priest said B, and the wolf repeated it. The priest said C, and the wolf repeated it. "Now put them together and make syllables," said the priest. The wolf replied, "I don't know how to make syllables." "Then say whatever sounds best to you," said the priest. The wolf thought for a moment and then said, "Lamb." The priest sighed. "What is in the heart comes out through the mouth," he said. 2 wolves met and talked about how humans hate wolves by nature and drive them away, even when they mean no harm. One said, "Humans have never seen us do anything good, but if they witness us doing good just once, they might believe we always mean well. Let's leave the forest and help them gather their sheaves." So they left the woods and went to a field. They gathered the sheaves, just as they had planned. But as soon as the humans saw wolves in the field, they cried out and chased them away. The wolves were startled. "Why do they shout at us?" one said. "We were doing good, not harm." "Let's go back," said the other. "We should just act as we always have. Whether we do good or evil, humans will always hate us." 660. The Monkey and the Bear. A monkey, who loved her offspring more than any other animal, was once holding her baby in her arms and showing it to a bear. The bear suddenly attacked the monkey, snatched the baby, and devoured it. The monkey, overwhelmed with grief, began to plot her revenge. She gathered wood and, under the cover of night, arranged it in a circle around the tethered bear. Then, setting it alight, she burned the bear, who had previously disregarded any harm the monkey could inflict with her strength. Many servants, when wronged, have sometimes killed their masters or set fire to their houses. 661. The Deer, the Fawn, and the Archer. A deer was instructing her fawn in the pastures when they encountered a hunter. She said, "This is the one you must fear the most." The fawn replied, "I know him, but he's not to be feared." I saw he was afraid. When he dismounted his horse, he placed it between us because he was scared. I also noticed his fear as he moved stealthily, hiding in dense thickets. "But what's that he's carrying in his hand?" Mother answered, "That curved wood is very dangerous, and what's held in the middle of the string is most fearsome." The young one asked, "If they're so dangerous, why does he pull them towards himself with all his might?" The mother explained, "The more he draws them to himself, the faster they'll reach us." 662. The Hare Desiring Horns. A hare saw a deer, magnificent with its large body and upright antlers. Unhappy with his own small stature, the hare approached Jupiter, wishing to complain about his humble condition. He said to Jupiter, "As you are the creator and lord, I complain about my lowly state. While other beasts pride themselves on nature's various gifts, I have nothing but the swiftness of my feet for flight. I ask you, creator, to give me horns like those of the deer." Jupiter granted his wish. But with his forehead burdened by the horns, the hare could no longer run and could barely crawl. He had asked for more than he could bear. Thus many yearn for great honours, but when they attain them, they become more worthless than before, unable to manage their newfound status. 63. The Hedgehog and the Wolf. Stealing a sheep. A wolf and a hedgehog in alliance came to a farm and stole a sheep. The wolf, carrying the sheep, fled, leaving his companion behind. But the hedgehog called out to the wolf, "You could at least give me a farewell kiss." The wolf approached and kissed him. The hedgehog, seizing the wolf's lips with his teeth, clung on. As the dogs gave chase, the wolf was forced to carry his clinging companion. The wolf said, "Let me go, or we'll both be caught." The hedgehog replied, "Such faithful companions should either escape together or be captured together." They reached the forest, and seeing he could escape, the hedgehog released his grip. "Go," said the wolf, "you miserable creature. I'll flee into the forest's hiding places to save myself." The hedgehog responded, "You're shamefully breaking our pact, returning to the sheep and leaving me behind." Thus it happens that the deceiver deceives himself. The Hedgehog and the Trapped Wolf. A wolf and a hedgehog formed an alliance. One day, the wolf, walking carelessly, stepped into a trap and got caught by the foot. He asked his friend, the hedgehog, to help him faithfully, as a good companion should. The hedgehog responded, "I cannot help you until the saints who have bound you release you. I believe you have made many vows to atone for your excesses, such as abstaining from meat and similar things, which you have not properly fulfilled. They have become offended and allowed you to fall into this snare. You must seek their favor. If you obtain it, I may be able to help you. Otherwise, I cannot, for I dare not oppose divine will." 665. The Hedgehog and the Deer. There was a contest between a hedgehog and a deer to see who could cross the meadow faster. "Alas," said the hedgehog, "it's impossible for me to win." Complaining and crying, he returned home. When his wife saw him grieving, she asked what was wrong. The hedgehog explained the situation. His wife replied, "You know well that we are so alike that no one can tell us apart. So, here's a plan. You and the deer will start together, but I will be at the finish line. When the deer runs to me, I will shout, I arrived faster, so I deny you the meadows. This will tire and deceive the deer." The hedgehogs followed this plan, and the deer, contrary to its expectations, left the meadow defeated. 666. The Badger and the Piglets. There was a great abundance of acorns, and pigs were sent with shepherds to the woods. A badger, a native of the forest who usually lived on acorns, saw the pigs devouring them and joined them, claiming to be of the same kind and therefore deserving to share in their pastures. But when he later saw the fattened pigs being slaughtered, fearing the same fate for himself, he said to the butchers, "You should not harm me, for I am by nature and breed a dog not fit for human consumption." He showed them his claws as proof and began to scratch the ground like a dog. 667. The Mouse, the Cat, and the Rooster. A mouse instructed her daughter not to leave their hole. However, the daughter went out and saw a rooster scratching through the straw with his feet and crowing loudly. She was frightened. She also saw a cat near the fireplace, approaching her slowly and gently. Without waiting, she ran back into the hole, trembling. When her mother found her shaking, the daughter explained what she had seen. The rooster seemed like a devil, and the cat like a hermit. The mother said, "Do not fear the one who seems so evil, but beware of the one who appears saintly." 668. The Rats, Mice, and Cat. A cat sat on top of a furnace, wearing a mitre and leaning on his staff. Calling the mice and rats, he declared himself a bishop and ordered them to bow for his blessing and become obedient to him. An old rat replied, "I would rather die a pagan than be made a Christian under your hand." Then the mice and rats, fleeing from his blessing, hid in their burrows. The cat, taking off his mitre, gave up his bishopric. The Donkey and the Wolf together. A wolf met a donkey and said, "O brother donkey, I will eat you." The donkey replied, "Do as you please, but I don't want you to eat me here on the road. If you do, the neighbours will see and say, 'How did our little donkey let himself be eaten by a wolf?' Let's go into the forest. Tie me by the chest as if I were your servant, and I will tie you by the neck as if you were my master. Then lead me to the depths of the forest and eat me there." The wolf agreed. "Let's do that." They went on, and the wolf tied the donkey by the chest, while the donkey tied the wolf by the neck. The donkey then began walking toward his master's house. When the wolf realized the trick, he tried to retreat, but the donkey forcefully dragged him to his master's door. The master and his entire household came out and beat the wolf nearly to death. The Horse and the Thorns. A hungry horse saw a field of grain, but didn't notice the thorns blocking the way until he felt the severe pain from the wounds in his belly. Thus the greedy see what they desire, but not considering the thorny obstacles, they rush toward their profits and end up with losses instead of gains. 671. The Horse and its Master. A farmer had only one horse. He thought that if he had another, he could plough better and tend his field more effectively. So he prayed to God, made offerings and gave alms, hoping to acquire another horse through divine favour. While he frequently made these vows, tiring God with his prayers, a thief happened to steal his only horse. After losing his horse, the man changed his vows and prayers, saying, "Lord God, if you return the stolen horse, I will no longer knock on your gates for another." The Ox and the Wolf. An ox seeking pasture in a valley saw a wolf approaching nearby. Unable to flee, the ox said, "Behold, I am ready for your wishes. I only ask one favour from you. Let me climb this mountain and pray to the Lord there for my soul and your well-being. Once done, I will immediately come down to you." The wolf replied, "Go, but pray briefly and be careful not to linger there." The ox climbed to the mountain-top and bellowed so terribly that his roar alerted the shepherds to the threat of a wolf approaching the flocks. Hearing this, the shepherds rushed over with their dogs, who tore the wolf apart with dreadful bites. Howling, the wolf said to the ox, "Brother, you prayed badly for me." The ox replied, "I knew I would get no mercy from you, so I had to be concerned for myself." The ox hauling manure. A farmer placed a yoke on his ox and used a cart to haul manure. He prodded the ox's sides with a sharp goad and gave it a heavy load to pull. The ox turned and began to reproach his master for all the services he had rendered and how much he had sweated in cultivating his fields. He said, I have often helped with your work. I have tilled your lands usefully since my youth, and now you compel me to laboriously haul this filth." The man responded, "I ask you, who piled up this manure?" The ox said, "I did. I trampled it with my feet." "Therefore," said the master, "since you accumulated the filth, you should not be reluctant to laboriously remove it." 674. The ram dressed in a dog's skin. A certain head of household had a flock of sheep, and a very large and fierce dog stayed with them for protection. Eventually, the dog died. An arrogant ram said to the shepherds, "Remove my wool and cut off my horns, then dress me in the dead dog's skin, and I will frighten all the wolves by sight." When the wolves came as usual, as soon as they saw the ram from afar, dressed in the dog's skin, they fled in great fear. But one day a very hungry wolf came, took a lamb, and fled. As the ram pursued more urgently, thorns placed near the road tore the dog's skin that the ram was wearing, and suddenly the sheep's skin appeared. Seeing this, the wolf understood the trick and immediately killed and ate him. This fable teaches that the foolish and weak should not rashly presume to deceive the wise and strong through trickery. A wolf came across two rams fighting in a meadow and said, "I will eat one of you." One of the rams replied, "Do as you wish. But first, judge fairly between us. This meadow belonged to our ancestors, and we are fighting because we don't know how to divide it." The wolf said, "I'll do as you wish if you tell me the method." Then one ram said, "Stand in the middle of the meadow, Lord. I will go to one end, and the other will go to the other. Whichever of us reaches you first gets the meadow, and you can eat the other." The wolf agreed. "Do so." The rams went to opposite ends of the meadow and charged at the wolf with great speed. They hit him from both sides so hard that he was covered in blood. With his ribs broken, the rams left, leaving him half dead. 676. The goats in the oven and the wolf. A wolf saw goats standing on an oven and said, "Thank the gods for seeing such a delicious meal." He began to approach them, but when the goats saw him coming, they hid inside the oven. The wolf, coming before the furnace, said, "Greetings, sisters. Surely I will eat my fill of you." The goats replied, "Listen, Lord, we came here only to celebrate sacred rites. Please allow us to sing. Afterwards, when the rites are finished, we will come out and do as you please." The wolf, pretending to be a priest, began to howl loudly before the oven. The villagers, hearing the wolf's howls, came out with clubs and dogs and beat him nearly to death. He barely escaped, half alive. 677. The Goat and His Shadow. A wolf was chasing a goat who climbed to a high rock. The wolf besieged him, and after 3 days, when the wolf was hungry and the goat thirsty, they both left. The wolf first to find food, and the goat later to drink. After drinking his fill, the goat saw his reflection in the water and said, "What a beautiful beard and large horns I have, yet the wolf chases me. From now on, I will resist him." The wolf, silently behind him, heard all these words. Sinking his teeth firmly into the goat's thigh, he said, "What's this you're saying, brother goat?" The goat, realizing he was caught, said, "Oh, my lord wolf, I beg for mercy. I acknowledge my fault, for a goat talks nonsense after drinking." But the wolf didn't spare him and devoured him. 678. The sow, her piglets, and the wolf. A wolf found a sow with her piglets grazing and said, "I will eat some of your piglets, my sister." The sow replied, "Do as you wish, but I ask that they first be washed in pure water, for they are not clean according to our custom. Then you can eat them as you wish." The wolf said, "Show me the fountain." The sow led him to a canal that flowed water into a mill and said, "Behold the sacred fountain." The wolf, standing at the top of the canal and pretending to be a priest, tried to grab a piglet and dip it in the water. Then the sow, with a loud grunt, violently pushed the wolf through the middle of the canal. The force of the water carried him to a wooden wheel, and the wheel's spokes severely crushed his limbs. 679. The Boar and the Wolf. A small boar lived among a herd of pigs. Filled with pride, he spun in circles, grunting and making noise. When no one feared him, he angrily said, "What good is it for me to stay here?" He moved among a flock of lambs and stood in their midst, turning in circles and grunting loudly. The frightened lambs all fled. The boar said, "This is where I should stay." One day a wolf came to the lambs. Seeing him from a distance, they all ran away. However, the boar did not bother to flee. The wolf caught him and carried him into the forest. By chance, they came upon a herd of pigs. The boar, recognizing them, cried out loudly. The pigs, knowing his voice, rose up together against the wolf and rescued their brother. Then the boar, full of shame, said, "In good times and bad, you should always stay with your own kind." The dog in the manger and the ox. A dog was lying in a manger full of hay. An ox came to eat the hay, but the dog immediately stood up and barked loudly. The ox said, "May the gods destroy you with your envy, for you neither eat the hay yourself, nor allow me to eat it." 681. The Eagle and the Old Vulture. A greedy vulture, now weakened by old age, sick and featherless, secretly snatched the eagle's chicks and lay in her nest, hoping the mother would feed him instead of her young. He hid there for a long time. The eagle, puzzled by the delay, often tried to drive him away, but he blamed nature for the delay. One day a great storm arose and thunder terrified the world. When sunlight returned after the rain, the eagle cried out, shaking her wet feathers, "I have never seen such a violent storm, though my age is often renewed." The foolish vulture replied, "I've seen far worse," and with these words quickly hid in fear. It is said the eagle responded, "Since no one can be born before their mother, how can you be older than me?" "Answer, fool, since you've given yourself away, why try to hide? Get out!" And she tore him from the nest and ripped him apart. 682. The Heron and the Hawk. The eagle was angry with the hawk, and on her orders the other birds chased him as he fled bay. The hawk hid in a cave to escape death. The birds waited outside, and when he didn't come out after a long time, they wondered how to draw him out. They decided the heron should go in and seize him. But as the heron pecked at him with her beak, the hawk grabbed her extended neck and held her captive. Overcome with fear, she defecated, soiling the birds below. Finally, freeing her neck, she decided to cross the sea and set off. A crow met her and asked where she was going. The heron said, "Shame drives me from my homeland, and I hurry to cross the seas." The crow replied, "You'll return home in disgrace, for wherever you flee, your rear end will always follow you." 683. The Sparrow and the Statue. A statue of a man stood in a field, with a bow drawn to destroy birds. Large and small birds, seeing this image, immediately fled and didn't dare to seek food in the field. Then a bold sparrow, seeing this, approached the statue, but it did not move. He got closer to its feet, and still it did not move. He climbed onto its head, and it didn't move. He flew onto the bow and arrow, and nothing happened. Finally, he flew onto its nose and defecated on its mouth, and the other birds followed suit. 684. The Cuckoo and the Small Bird. Once, when the birds gathered to choose a king, they heard the distant voice of a cuckoo singing. All the birds praised the melodious voice, but didn't know which bird had made the sound. They agreed that a bird with such eloquence would be worthy of ruling. So they sent a small bird to observe the cuckoo's appearance. The small bird came and perched on a tree next to the cuckoo. Wanting to test the cuckoo's character, the small bird defecated on its back, but the cuckoo didn't move at all. The small bird returned to the council and, disgusted by the cuckoo's indifference, reported its dishonor to the other birds. "How," it said, "can the cuckoo defend itself against a large bird when it didn't even dare resist me, the smallest of birds? We should not choose such a one as our leader, but instead someone wise, strong, and brave." With everyone's agreement, they made the eagle their king, judging it worthy of rule. 685. The Dove and the Wolf. A wolf saw a wild dove gathering twigs and said, "I see you collecting wood all day, but I've never seen you have a good house or make a good fire." The dove replied, "Ever since we've been neighbors, I've seen you dragging and gathering sheep, but I've never seen you better dressed or with a larger family." Ye doves, the eagle, and the hawk. We have it from ancient tradition that the eagle is king of all birds. Once it perched at the top of an oak tree. The hawk, called the judge of birds, sat below the eagle on a branch closer to the ground. On the ground, doves played with light wing flapping, satiated with grains of wheat. The hawk spoke to them. "What audacity gives you the confidence to frolic so in my presence, who am called your judge and master?" Know for certain that if the eagle, our king, were not sitting above me, I would quickly involve you in other games. It is useful for a judge to be subject to a higher power, by whose fear he restrains his anger within its proper limits. 6687. The Dragon and the Man. A dragon formed a friendship pact with a man, and they lived together. It happened that the dragon entrusted its treasures to the man's care. Later, the cunning dragon, wanting to test its companion's loyalty, brought out an egg and said, "There is another treasure of mine, not much less than these, which you must see and guard. So guard this egg in good faith, because my life and all my well-being depend on it." Having said this, the dragon went on its way, leaving the man to guard its possessions. But the man, greedy for gold, thought about obtaining the treasure for himself and decided to break the egg, in which he believed the dragon's life resided. He carried out his plan without delay. Therefore, when the dragon returned hurriedly to its companion and found the egg broken, it openly recognized its companion's lack of faith. The beetle flying high. A beetle, leaving its dung heap well fed, saw an eagle soaring high above. It said to its companions, "Behold the eagle, fierce of beak and talons, strong in body, swift of wing. At will, it ascends to the clouds and swiftly descends as it pleases. We, however, are counted neither among worms nor birds. Yet the eagle is neither sweeter in voice nor brighter in colour than I. Henceforth, I shall not enter the dung heap. Instead, I will join the birds and fly with them everywhere." Then, rising high, it began to buzz with an ugly sound. As it tried to follow the eagle in the heights, unable to withstand the harsher air, it fell, shaken and stunned, far beyond its usual bounds. There, in danger of starvation, it said sadly, "I wouldn't care whether I was considered a worm or a bird, if only I could return to my old dung heap." 689. The Beetle and the Wolf. A wolf was sleeping with its rear end open. A beetle entered and began to tickle the sleeper. The wolf, sensing an enemy inside, feared great danger. The beetle then exited the way it came. The wolf was indignant that such a tiny creature had caused it fear, and a battle was promised. The wolf summoned the beasts, who chose a stag as their leader. But the wolf warned his allies, "O noble beasts, do not fear the strength of these tiny creatures. Just take care they don't enter our rear ends." So each tied a board to its backside. Wasps, bees, flies, and the beetle leader himself arrived. The stag, experiencing the fiercest enemy's weapons, released wind with a sound, breaking the board. Thus the leader turned tail, shattering the board in which the entire army's strength was trusted. So the whole army is easily shaken when it sees its leader turn tail. The Beetle and the Thief. A notorious thief, exhausted from his nightly rounds, came to a meadow adorned with flowers and grass. Delighted by the pleasant spot, he lay down in the grass. But as sleep overcame him, a beetle immediately entered him through his lower regions. The thief, feeling the discomfort of his unwelcome guest, quickly awoke and began to feel pain. He went to the doctors, who said he was pregnant. This strange and astonishing news spread throughout the neighbourhood, and those who heard were amazed and greatly afraid, saying it portended evil. They watched the labouring and groaning thief, sitting around him to see the outcome and the danger it seemed to foretell. As he groaned and cried out as if about to give birth, behold, the beetle, exhausted from its long struggle, came out the way it had entered. And so the beetle, a stimulator of horses, was found to be a stimulator of the thief. A villager once caught a mountain dwarf. To be released, the dwarf offered the man 3 wishes. The wife asked her husband to let her choose, claiming she knew better what to wish for. The man granted his wife 2 wishes. She waited for the right moment to make her wish. One day she was gnawing on a ram's backbone. Unable to reach the marrow she craved, she handed the bone to her husband and said, "I wish you had an iron beak to easily extract this marrow." Instantly, her husband sat there with an iron beak. Then the wife said, "I wish your face was without the beak." Immediately, her husband sat there without the beak, but also without a nose. Then he said to his wife, "I wish my face was as it was before." Thus their wishes brought them no benefit. 692. The condemned man choosing a tree. A foolish man, condemned to be hanged, was granted the right to choose the tree from which he would be suspended. Led through the woods, he found no tree that pleased him for hanging, and thus he was freed. 693. The peasant raised in dung. A peasant raised in smoke and animal dung passed by an apothecary where aromatic spices were being ground. Unable to bear the smell, he collapsed, half dead, and could not recover or be comforted until he was carried home and returned to the stench of smoke and dung. 694. The ploughman and the hunter. A hunter with dogs was chasing a small hare. As the hare fled, it happened to pass by a ploughman. The ploughman struck it with his staff, hid it under a furrow, and covered it with earth. Later, the hunter approached from afar and called out, "Ploughman, did you see a hare pass by?" The ploughman replied, "I don't know what you're talking about." The hunter lamented, "Oh, how good it would have been with pepper." Then the ploughman, prodding his oxen with a goad, said, "Go on, for it will be excellent with salt." 695. The hermit and the mouse. A hermit, wanting to test his servant's faithfulness, hid a mouse under a vessel and said to the servant, "I must go visit my fellow brothers. You will remain to guard the cell. If you need to take anything, nothing is forbidden to you. But do not touch or move that overturned vessel there. I don't want you to know what's underneath it." When the master left, the servant wondered about the forbidden object. He thought he could easily find out without his master knowing. Approaching the vessel, he carelessly removed it and freed the hidden mouse. When the hermit returned, he immediately asked the servant if he had seen the vessel's secret. The servant said, "I did see it, but I wish I hadn't." 696. The unruly wife and her husband. A woman, while crossing a river in a boat, met with a bitter fate and lost her life in the middle of the waters. Her husband hurried to find her lifeless body so he could give proper funeral honours to his dear wife's remains. A crowd gathered unaware of the tragic event and was travelling along the bank of the deadly river. "Have you seen any trace of my wife?" the husband asked. One person replied, "We haven't seen anything." To find her drowned body, sail downstream in a light boat where the current flows swiftly over the shallow ford. "Don't look there," another said with a smile. "Instead, turn your boat around and go upstream. No matter how fast the river carried her away, her rebellious nature would have compelled the stubborn woman to go against the current."